So what exactly is an essay? At the end of the day, an essay is basically an argument. You are simply making an argument. So what the person will bring to the table is the marker, or the person making the exam, has asked you a question, and they're asking you to answer the question. That is all they're asking you to do. Some people find it really intimidating. I don't know what to say, I don't know how to write it. At the end of the day, what they're asking you to do is answer the question that they've asked. Now, what I'm going to give you is some tips on how to do that, some tips on how to approach the question, some tips on how to structure your essay so that what you're saying answers the question as clearly as possible. So let's have a look. First thing you're supposed to do is work out what the question is. I say deconstruct the question. What does that mean? To deconstruct the question? Simply, you're working out what the question's asking and how it's asking you to actually answer the question. So, if the question was, from a legal studies point of view, let's say assess the effectiveness of the legal system. Okay, it's a really broad question, isn't it? Assess the effectiveness of the legal system. How do you actually do that? How do you deconstruct the question? What you're looking for is you're looking to actually categorize the words in the question to work out what it is. So, for example, that question, assess the effectiveness of the legal system. What's the doing word in there? What's the verb? Assess. It's asking you to assess what? The effectiveness of the legal system. So straight away, you've got the verb, assess. You know that you have to provide an assessment. Then you know what you're using to actually provide the assessment. You're assessing the effectiveness, how effective it is. And then what is it that you're actually looking at? What's the topic? The legal system. So there's a couple of things you can actually use when you're looking at the question. You might say, it's asking me to explain this, or it's asking me to assess this. So you assess. You're looking at what am I assessing, how am I assessing it, and often, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying it's a broad question, often you can add something to that in regards to victims in civil cases or in regards to victims in crime. Does that make sense? So often they'll actually give a limiting kind of account there which actually limits the question. So it might say, assess the effectiveness of the legal system in relation to appellate jurisdiction, or in relation to the state Supreme Court. So you're talking about a particular court system within the legal system. Everyone getting that? Alright, so you need to first deconstruct the question, work out what the question is actually asking you to do, then work out how it's asking you to do it. Alright, so it's not just, and you might be going, how on earth do I do that? We'll try it, we'll use lots of examples, and you'll see it's not a heaps hard thing to do. It's a skill, it takes a little while to do it. Okay, what are they actually asking me? What are the words? What do those words mean? I want to make sure I properly understand the question. So, once you've done that, come up with an essay plan. Very rarely will you, as I've said previously, the recording didn't work, those people at home that are wondering what's going on. Very rarely will you write a well-structured, clear essay that's logical, that flows well, unless you've actually planned it out clearly. And the plan, you start with working out what the answer is. You've already looked at the question, you've already worked out what they're asking you and how they're asking you to do it. Now you work out what the answer is. So your answer might be, the legal system is not effective when it comes to dealing with victims in crime, in a certain type of crime, in white-collar crimes, for example. And these are the reasons why. So when you've worked out what your answer is, you really need to work out what's the best way to actually answer the question. And that's, with structuring there. There can be more than one way to structure an answer. What you're looking for is what's the best way to structure it so that my answer is as clear as humanly possible. If I was to give an example, if it said compare and contrast the legal process for minority groups dealing with a certain issue for, say, Aboriginal people and the elderly. Compare their access to the legal system. What you could do is you could answer that in two ways. You could say they're very different, or they're the same. These two groups access to the legal system, and so you could structure that question by saying, here's all the access that Aborigines have to the legal system. They have this happens, A happens, B happens, C happens. Now let's talk about when the elderly people try and access the system. A, B, C happens. That's the way you could structure it. Just to reiterate, You want to come up with a structure that best and most clearly answers the question. So the reader knows exactly what your answer is, exactly how you're going to get to that answer, and so that the argument flows. The answer is A plus B plus C equals the answer. I'm going to go talk about A, and that adds up to this, then I'll talk about B, and that adds up to this, C, that adds up to this, therefore A plus B plus C equals the answer. So we're going to use this question and do a little example. Okay, so straight away we've got, what have you been asked to do? So compare and contrast, there are two words, yes? Let's put that in a different colour, it makes sense. Compare and contrast. What are you contrasting? What are you comparing? What are you contrasting? Access to the legal system. Yes, so access to the legal system is the thing that you are comparing and contrasting. And which groups have it? Elderly and Aborigines. Okay, so you've got Aboriginal access and elderly access. That's the question. You have been asked to look at access to the legal system for Aboriginal people and access to the legal system for elderly people and compare and contrast that access. Let's have a look at how you could plan it. Okay, so how do we structure this question? Well, you could do it this way. Let's find, say, 3 things, or 2 even, that are similar, 2 comparisons, and 3 things that are different, and just go, here's the answer. There are 3 things that are similar, there are 3 things that are different, and go similarities, and then differences. In conclusion, there are 3 things that are similar about their access to the law, there are 3 things that are different about their access to the law. So you've grouped together the actual problems or the advantages that they have when they're accessing the law, and you've gone, when it comes to comparisons, I've got 3 things that are grouped together. When it comes to contrasting, here are 3 things that are different about their access to the law. Or you could do it quite different to that, and as I previously stated, you could go, here's what Aboriginal access is like, here's what the elderly access is like, and then within there, when you're describing what the access is like, you're going to draw like an overall picture of their access. So we can say in conclusion that the Aboriginal access has problems like this, and this. However, when they're helped out by that, and that. Now let's talk about this. Elderly access. Talk about the access. Now we can see that elderly access, they have problems with this, and this. And they have advantages that are like this, and this. Then your conclusion is what puts them together. Therefore, by looking at both sides' access to the law, we can see that they have similar problems in this and this area. However, they're helped out in that and that area. Everyone see how 2 different structures can still answer the same question. You just need to go, well, what's the best way? What's the easiest, most clearest, most logical way to set this answer out so that the marker knows exactly what I know and how well I've answered the question. So, introduction. Your introduction should include the answer. You should seek to answer the question as soon as humanly possible. Introduction should have the answer in it. If you're assessing the effectiveness of the legal system in relation to victims of corporate crime, your answer should be, the legal system is inefficient in dealing with victims of corporate crime, or is largely effective with these limiting factors. So, your intro should include the answer. The intro should also include a definition of terms. Alright? If there's certain terms, you need to be able to define them so that you and the marker, or the person reading it, are on the same page when you're using that term. Example from our last example, access to the legal system. What does that mean? What are you referring to when you are saying access to the legal system? Understand? Okay, you would seek, in that example, to define Aborigines, the elderly, and access to the legal system. Okay, and you do it in the intro so the marker knows who you're referring to and what you're referring to when you say this. Therefore, this access to the system is the legal system is limited. Yes, it's important to note that last bit. the reasons why that is the answer. So the intro should have, this is the answer, this is what I mean when I talk about this, this, and this, and these are the reasons why that is the answer. And that should structure your essay. Okay, so if you have, say, 3 points that make up your answer, okay, the legal system is not effective because in this circumstance, this person gets, stuffed. In this circumstance, it's a costly and very long-winded way of doing nothing. And this other reason, set it out so that those 3 reasons are going to be your paragraphs, or are going to be what you're talking about, and in that order. So the marker, the person that's reading it, can read your intro and know how you're setting out your answer.